have the absolute pleasure of speaking with Charlie Fink, author of the new book, Charlie Fink's Metaverse, an AR guide to VR and AR. He's also a regular contributor in Forbes, a former Disney executive who famously came up with the idea for The Lion King, which I want to talk about. He speaks at conferences on the topic of AR and VR and is a regular contributor to the Huffington Post, Virtual Reality Pop, and VR Focus. Welcome, Charlie. Thank you for taking time to talk with me today. Anything I missed?
That's VR Scout, not VR Focus, although they are a fine publication also.
Oh, I get it. Okay.
Anyway, thank you for that kind introduction and for inviting me to share the first Copen, Facebook Live webinar, or whatever we would call it, talk, visit, whatever. But I'm happy to be here. I love talking about my book, so happy to do that.
Well, I tell you, I appreciate you taking the time to be here. And yeah, this is our flagship, our first flagship Facebook Live video.
Let's set a high bar.
Yeah, we are setting a high bar, right? But hey, we got a great guest, so that's a bar well set. So I want to talk today about the book and kind of VR and AR to set the scene, kind of, maybe get some of your predictions for future and talk about some use cases. One of the things I want to really start out with is I love the book, especially all the AR Easter eggs and augmented reality artwork. I think that was huge, and that was a really nice surprise. I got the book at the book signing, wasn't really sure what to expect, and then started to read it, and all of a sudden got to actually interact with it. So it was a really nice surprise. What inspired you to write the book, but more importantly, create an app so readers could fully experience the book? By the way, I think my prediction is that this is really going to be the future of textbooks and children's books.
I would think it would be the future of technical books, although publishers are incredibly cheap. So I'm not sure. Ultimately, there'll be that many of them, because you have to take on the extra expense of building the app and potentially making the animation. Although in this case, the people who did the animation were partners in the publishing of the book. But, that's $80,000 of animation that's in that book that they donated. Or rather that they put in as an investment. They had a big contract with one of the major studios to deliver an AR Christmas book, and the whole thing fell apart, but they were fully staffed up, and they were in the process of just doing the cover. And then they said, let us do the whole book. I said, okay. But, it's like when you're doing the right thing, the universe rewards you. I really have come to believe that. And when you're doing the wrong thing, no matter how much of a fighter you are, no matter how much of a fixer you are, your chances of succeeding, if it's the wrong thing and the universe doesn't help you, are very, very slim. Yeah. And so I'm just grateful that the book was needed and wanted and has been so successful and is reaching so many people. It's been picked up as a textbook at several dozen universities. I mean, the book's only been out for 6 months. We're already into our second printing. It's in Barnes & Noble now. So it's exceeded my expectations in every way. The way the book came about was, I had been writing for Forbes, I think about 6 months, when Bob Fine, who runs VR Voice, and he also has a publishing label called Cool Blue Press, and he has published several books, including one on social media that has been quite popular and also used widely as a textbook. So he said, just collect your columns from Forbes and, put them in the book with some illustrations. And, it'll be like a $5 business card for you. And I think we can make our money back. And I said, I don't want to do a cheap book like that. I'll do a book if it's AR enabled. I want to put Senka's art in the book. I want to put, I want to get something done for the cover because I want to make something that's as active and as visual and exciting as this medium. So, my point of view and my brand in all of these talks is unbridled enthusiasm and vision for where wearable, contextually aware computing is going.
Nice.
Now, I don't think that's a tree under whose shade at 58 years old I'm going to sit. So at the same time I'm a dreamer, I also am a practical dreamer, right? And so when people say things like Apple is going to have computer vision, wearable head-mounted displays in 2020, I'm the guy who has to throw cold water on it and give them a list of all the things that haven't been invented yet, including a universal visual browser and its UI. And you know very well, you don't invent a product on Wednesday and ship a consumer product on Thursday. These things have extremely long development cycles, years. And when they are released, they're released slowly and iteratively. So I don't believe 2020 for a second. Do I think there will be lots of consumer head-mounted displays available in 2020? Absolutely. But penetrating the consumer market, I think we're following the path of the personal computer, which took almost 20 years.
I believe that. One of the things that your book did too is, as I was looking at it and my little one sat on my lap, I started to read it to him, and then we started looking at it through, the phone, and all of a sudden his eyes got big because this was really, really cool. So you not only touched, hit AR and introduced it to the masses, our age, but you're also now hitting it at 6 years old. And
yes, well, he will grow up knowing intuitively which objects are covered with data. He will know if you point your phone at a car, it will reveal itself and a deeper truth about it to you. He will know that every toy box and every toy is painted with data, and that with the right app open on your phone, you can unlock that other invisible world around it. So he's going to live, he'll be the first generation that lives in that world of invisible wearable computing. When he's in his 20s and I'm in a geriatric nursing home, he will be walking around with a pair of glasses and nothing else, and be totally connected on demand and see data if he wants wherever he goes.
It's funny because I want to touch base on that in a second.
If he wants is a very fundamental idea, because the one thing people don't talk about when they talk about the universal visual browser is filters and privacy. So there is not going to be like one AR cloud and somebody can take a mythical shit on your house and, anchor it in place. And every time somebody holds a camera up to your house, they see this piece of shit. That's not the way it works. These things are tied to apps, and, apps are, secure. So you're not going to see, anything in the AR cloud that has anything to do with Facebook unless you've asked Facebook to be part of the universal browser. And even then, you can choose to look at something or not look at something. You don't want to be forced to look at every Facebook post. You may be doing something else right then.
Do you think I'll always need an app, though? Do you think there'll become a time
for a really long time? I just don't see there being. I think there may be open apps, but here's the problem that the open apps have. It's going to be filled with pictures of penises and pornography. It's going to be a free-for-all, and all of that 3D content has to be hosted somewhere. I'll tell you what I have been thinking, though. We just jumped right into the AR cloud. This is great, though. I'll tell you what I have been thinking, because I am working with someone to design the universal visual browser. I have never seen posted anywhere a concept for the universal visual browser. So I am making it.
Well, there you go. All right, you heard it.
I am making it, and I'm going to post it on the internet for everybody to steal, because that's how dumb I am. But still, nobody has posted it. So, I'm going to post this, and yes, content will, because that's the only way for it to be secure, right? Is for it to be through a trusted provider and connected to your social graph. So you won't even be able to see other Facebook stuff unless it's connected to you. Now, Facebook may put ads up, right? You could see retrieving a Facebook post, from a certain location, like say a restaurant, and suddenly there's a floating hamburger next to the message from your friend. I totally see that.
Yeah.
Because that will be how you pay to get that message, which has to be stored somewhere. So now, do I think there could be an open app where anybody could post anything? It would be like Yik Yak. You remember Yik Yak? That was the app where you could post you could geolocate posts that were totally anonymous. So, of course, it got scary really, really pretty quickly, and no advertiser ever wanted to be associated with it. So how do you solve that problem, right? If you have an open app, Well, first of all, somebody's got to pay for hosting. I wouldn't do it through advertising anyway. I would just charge people. Like, you get 3 free notes, and after that, it's, buy a package of notes for $10.
Okay.
That way, I've tied the note to somebody if they're, doing TOS violations or something like that. I've got a revenue stream, and I've created a platform where people can post graffiti, political ideas, whatever the hell they want.
Nice.
And the problem is all those things have to expire. You can't keep posting them, and you want the content that's not interesting to disappear right away.
But will it disappear right away?
Well, yeah. I mean, you program it so that, I'm going to keep this 3D item in my database for 7 days. And, certainly for ones that are free or trial, they should certainly expire. And then again, if you want something to stay up longer, you have to keep paying for it. So I think an app like that would be very, very interesting. It's an interesting business model. So if I was still an entrepreneur, there's a company I would look at starting.
Very good. Let's go back to the book for a second, because in the cover, it says this book is out of date. And I just want to show the cover if anybody hasn't seen it, but inside the cover here, it says this book is out of date. Would you care to expand on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So open it up, show it. It's like a big black bold spread that says this book is out of date, right? It's the first really strong statement that the book makes. And it's kind of a graphic slap in the face, because I presumed that the book, and I started writing it this time last year. So some of the content in that book is a year old. So I assumed, given how quickly things move in this space, that by now it would need a major rewrite. So I'm happy to say we just did a second printing and I didn't need to change a word. I don't think it needs a major rewrite. But I do think it has sins, and those sins are sins of omission. For example, Copen's not in it. If I did that book today, I would do a whole chapter about Copen, because you couldn't know everything. It would have taken me 10 years to learn everything. So, that was everything I had learned about VR in 18 months, VR and AR in 18 months. So, now it's a year later, and, I know 50% more. So there's a lot more that I would put in a book. That's why I'm thinking about doing a second book. If I can get support for it, I will. And that book will be called The World Will Be Painted with Data. And the subtitle is How Augmented Reality Changes Everything. And that would be just AR, not VR. Because I don't think the book that I would write about VR would be as much fun and as exciting as the book that I would write about AR, because AR is happening today. Mobile AR, 2 billion phones are enabled to do mobile AR right now. I mean, and that is the platform we are already using. So let's improve it using AR, right? So what AR means to mobile is not AR apps. It means the apps we use every day are better because they are AR enabled. But that's not a word or an idea that consumers need to know. All they need to know is Google Maps is better.
I will tell you, I did notice, though, in your update on Metaverse that you did mention there was an article pointing to Forbes about the Solo smart glasses. So Copen is kind of...
I love talking about the Solo smart glasses because, there are lots of... If you go to Amazon, just for shits and giggles, type in micro display or monocular micro display, and there are like hundreds of cheap micro displays that connect to your smartphone using Bluetooth. Now, there's some issues, how it gets mounted, what kind of glasses you need to accommodate the mount, a little bit like your new GoldenEye product, although those are not premium screens. Those are the super low cost ones that you see on like Alibaba for 99 cents. Right? I mean, you could buy a micro display at Alibaba for 99 cents. I mean, I don't know how good it is, but I don't know if you can even read what was on it, but you can buy one for 99 cents. People don't buy them and nobody talks about them and it's not a thing. And, there may be a lot of reasons for that, that have to do with marketing and quality, but it's also that it's not a purpose-built thing. And the great thing about the Solos is that it was engineered for purpose, right? The problem with augmented reality is that everybody wants a Swiss Army knife, right? Everybody wants it to do messages and play games and give directions and, tell me what floor I'm on. And, they want it to do a million things. But if you really focus on having it accomplish a few things, for example, with performance cycling, you want it to be, work as a walkie-talkie with team members. You want to get, biometric information. You want to get course information, and you want to get it on demand, but not by occluding your vision or using your hands. So, the tininess of the micro display is really what distinguishes it. I mean, I have never seen a micro display that microscopic. And it goes on these attractive, essentially racing sunglasses. So I think it's a beautiful, beautiful product. I hope that it's embraced. And I think Kopin did what any smart, consumer products company would do, which is you spend a lot of time with the athletes who are your target market. And they told you what they needed, and you tried to meet that need. So that's a great example of that purpose-built, great application for AR. It's another tool that these athletes can use to give them, an edge, however slight, at their level of performance. That's what makes a difference a lot of times.
Nice, yeah. I had a chance to play with them. They really are fantastic. And Kopin is,
they're only $600. I mean, we're talking about people who spend $12,000 for a bicycle. Yep. So I think that, and again, cyclists don't have ways. Even amateurs who do cross country riding don't have ways to talk to each other easily.
Nope. They don't. And so I think that's the niche, and it's a nice product, and everybody that gets their hands on it, from what I'm told, out at these races and out to shows, are like, wow, like this is really cool. So it's
I got a demo pair. I need to send them back. I've been a little lazy about that. But I'm not really using them. They're just in sort of the VR AR pile in my office. I should send them back. The only complaint I had about them was the wings don't fold. So it's a little like the HoloLens. You need a box to kind of carry it, because you really want to, if it's a sports thing, be able to take it off and go like that. So that was the only flaw I found in an otherwise beautiful product that I really am rooting for. It is made with great care and craftsmanship.
Hey, we're rooting for it too.
Yeah, I'll bet you are.
Hey, quick question. So you talked about, when you wrote the book, we talked about how it was out of date, and now that you wrote your second edition of it.
The second one is in progress.
In progress. So what'd you learn about AR and VR from writing the second one that you didn't know on the first one?
Well, that's the title of the book. The world will be painted with data. So I did not really understand how, it started with, here, I'll tell you the story in a narrative way. ARKit and AR Core came out, and I was very excited because I thought now all phones would be AR enabled and we would have AR. And what I didn't understand was almost every use case and every app that I could think of required the device to be getting data from somewhere, right? Mm-hmm. And because that amount of data can't exist on the handset. The other thing I didn't understand was how many different modes of AR there really are. I mean, AR is just a very, very broad idea, and it covers a wide spectrum of devices. I can think of at least 8 or 10 applications that are wildly different, like holographic telepresence, versus monocular micro displays, versus heads-up displays, versus night vision. I mean, there are a lot of modes of AR. It is a very, very big idea. And so that was, certainly one of the big takeaways. That's why my next book is going to be exclusively about AR. One of the other things that happened really kind of while I was in the process, while I was in the process of writing the book, was that, AR was getting very hot with the introduction of ARKit and AR Core, which really did nothing more than allow you to anchor content that you got from somewhere else realistically on planes around you, right? So they're really very good at detecting planes, but you have to have content to put on them, and especially if you want the content to be timely and relevant, you have to get it from a cloud someplace. So there's a long path from, oh my God, I'm now enabled to plant content on a plane, to what should that content be? Where does it come from? How does it, enhance or enable a new kind of experience? So it's taken a long time, but now, really less than a year later, which seems like, our business is like dog years, it seems like 7 years, but it's really been 9 months later, we're starting to see what kinds of things it really will enable, starting with things like, the update to Google Maps.
Okay.
Anyway, so while that I was writing the book and AR was getting sort of heating up and we were starting to understand the implications of it, VR, kind of continued its treading of water in the market, right? Not really adding a lot of new users. It's got a lot of passion behind it. It's slowly making its way into enterprise because it is so fantastic for simulation. But among consumers, kind of everybody who was going to buy one bought it. And there's nobody else left to buy it. Partly because it's hard, partly because it's expensive. As I said, it's just like the development pattern of the personal computer. The personal computer was something we got to know at work. The personal computer was not something that came into the home that people found also had great work applications. No, I mean, we used the internet at work first. We did, email at work first, and then we figured out that we needed it at home. That's what's happening with VR. People will do it in malls. They'll do it in VR-cades. They'll do free roam VR, perhaps in a standalone destination or an entertainment center or at a theme park, and they'll become familiar with it that way, right? That's kind of how the hierarchy of technology works. It starts out in the military, where the heads-up display is $400,000, and it goes down to enterprise, where it starts to be more accessible, and eventually you get it with a new Honda, like you do today, for free. So that's the cascade of technology. That heads-up display in the 80s was, oh my God, no one had ever seen anything like it. Here we are 30 years later, and it's like, it's no big deal. And so, I think we have to have, when we're talking about AR and VR, we have to have that attitude that, the near term is completely overestimated and that the long term is completely underestimated.
So, speaking of the long term, when you spoke at the AR and Action conference, you said we are talking about a future of mankind. We're talking about the largest companies in the world controlling this technology when you were referring to AR and VR. Then I think about the movie Ready Player One, which in my opinion represents a really bleak future where everybody wears a headset, right? Everybody wears a headset to escape reality, to spend time in the oasis. In the movie, the innovative online industries, the most powerful company in the world, is trying to control this technology. If you could look into your VR crystal ball, do you think this is where we're heading as a culture and society?
Well, first of all, I think it's very lazy to assume it's going to be dystopia. So I'm preferring not to have that vision of the future, but I think that's kind of the default because it's easy and obvious. But I think there are some amazing things happening that are going to make life better for a lot of people. I do think the scary part, and the part that I think Ready Player One really didn't address what the revolution was about or what was going on there. It's explained in the book, but in the movie, it's completely like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
Plot holes in the movie, despite its brilliance and visual delight, there were big plot holes in it and didn't at times make a whole lot of sense, but it was going fast enough that if you just went along with it, you would, have a fun ride. I mean, it was just, Steven Spielberg at the height of his powers at this point.
But,
I don't think...
Not to interrupt you, sorry, but right now you have people, you go out anywhere and everybody's staring down at their phones, right? They're looking at their phones, they're staring at their phones, they're at dinner and they're talking to their phone, not to you. That's where I'm kind of seeing it morph.
Yeah. Well, certainly, one of the things I talk about in the book and in the conclusion of the book is the unintended consequences of new technology, which certainly here in the West, we are not good at anticipating that, and has created and will continue to create a lot of social disruption as certain classes of jobs are vaporized. Let's take the example of Facebook. We all thought that Facebook's ability to share things with our friends and like-minded people, people who shared our interests, was the best thing about it. But in fact, it may destroy democracy. Self-driving cars may save a lot of lives, but if you put 10 million people out of work, most of them will never be employed again.
That's great.
So, the profits of that technology will go to technology companies and the owners of the transportation companies that use the technology. And the workers, the unemployed workers, whose responsibility are they? They belong to us. They are us. And so those businesses have effectively privatized the profit and socialized the risk. They've offloaded their responsibility onto the government. That's why China would never do that. Right, but in the United States, our government has no control over that. China may say no new truck drivers will be hired, but they don't, fire 10 million people. And that's the sort of thing that happens in the West. And it's going to potentially make us a lot less competitive and a lot poorer, even as technology gets better. And even as people like you and me, hugely, college educated elites working for technology companies, live better and better lives, while, people on the outside of the city wall, so to speak, have unemployment and opium addiction. And, that I think one of the trends that Hewlett Packard, put out a report on 2050, because it guides a lot of their thinking with regard to factory scale 3D printing and decisions about strategies in those areas, is that they believe the future is megacities, right? They believe there'll be these high-tech megacities, people will be attracted to them, that's where the jobs are, and these megacities will be anywhere from 10 million to 60 million people.
Wow, that's a lot.
and could be hundreds of miles across. Like the state of Israel size cities.
Yeah.
And those cities may have their own borders. They will certainly have their own police. And transportation as it exists today will be a thing of the past, because so much will be printed locally.
That makes sense.
So, that's their view of 2050. Now, again, I think that's too much technology for 2050. I don't believe it. There are a lot of people walking around saying self-driving cars are a fantasy. That's never going to happen. No one is going to lose their job. The great thing about being a futurist is it's provocative, it's controversial. I certainly think it's easy to be pessimistic given the political situation in the world today. But I'm not going to go with Ready Player One. I don't think VR is going to be that good. When are we going to have that? Forget about the bandwidth that Ready Player One would require. It would also require basically an infinite amount of storage, right? Because that entire scene, everything that happens to you, is being downloaded in real time into your device.
Yeah, there you go.
So where was all that data going that was going into their headsets? Was it going out the other end like a toilet draining? No one has, because and that would mean, of course, running around on the street would be a bad idea, because you need to be in one place to have the consistent bandwidth. So there's a lot of technology in Ready Player One that hasn't been invented yet. I do think that one thing that sort of just happens and the players take for granted in Ready Player One is the amount of AI that is in the Oasis.
Hey, Charlie, we got about a minute left.
Wow.
You're taking the time. I have more questions for you, but we have one.
Wow, that was really fast. I thought we had an hour.
I thought we did too. The director is telling me 1 minute.
Oh, man. Sorry. Jeez.
No, real quick. What's next for Charlie Fink, and how can people connect with you?
Well, you can follow me on social media. I do have a consulting business. I'm happy to talk to anybody about AR and VR for 10 minutes or so. But after that, I have a consulting business, and that's how I make most of my money, that and paid speaking gigs. My writing, those of you out there who are, doing online journalism know about how well that pays. So, but follow me on social media. I am constantly checking and very responsive. I try to, with a few exceptions, respond to emails every day. Charlie Fink on Twitter, CD Fink on Instagram, and / Charlie Fink on LinkedIn.
And I'll keep promoting your stuff too. Thank you so much for the time, Charlie.
And I will keep talking about Copen because it's a great company and a great story.
You're the best. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.